Welcome everyone. This is Live Learn Life with me, Dylan Swanepoel, and I'm joined today by three fantastic individuals. Two of them who I've known for the last few years really well. Another one, Phoebe, who I've met in the last few days or a few hours, a few minutes, however you want to say it. And I'm looking forward to having a chat about Movember, men's health, and just sort of all things health-wise. So, firstly, welcome to all of you. Archie, Alex, who's a doctor, Archie, who's from Notts Uni, and Phoebe, who's from Lancaster Uni. So we've got all a bit of different perspectives, also joining together and seeing what we can come up with. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining me. And we'll sort of dive straight in. So I'll throw a question out there to everyone. We know we're talking about Movember and sort of men's health and all of that. But if I had to say it to you, what is health to you? What does that look like?
Start with AT, shall we? The doctor.
We go with the doctor. AT, what does health look like to a doctor?
So when I was doing a bit of digging, so you've got the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So I think, but then, my kind of when I read this, I was wondering, is this actually a realistic or an achievable definition? Because to me, it makes it or gives the impression that anyone who has any sort of illness is immediately unhealthy, which I don't feel matches with this idea that you can still be content in life and have make the best of whatever situation you've got. But there's good parts of it. I think it's quite a broad definition that I think a lot of people, when we think of health, just think of kind of physical health, and now it's kind of more recently mental health become much more prominent. But I think this idea of health as a kind of as a combination of everything that's going on in life and contributes to, I think, is quite at least a good kind of starting discussion point for what how we can go about kind of defining health and what we can do about making it better for everybody.
What does health look like to you, Eddie? What if I just say the word plainly health? What does it sound like to you?
That's AT, sorry.
Yeah, that's 80. Alex.
Well, again, I think I would say it's to be in a state where you can do whatever you want to do. I think that's how you can define it to an individual is what is important to someone, and as long as you're able to do that, I'd define that as healthy.
Phoebe, what about you? What are your thoughts on health?
I think that when you brought up the definition, I do agree with the definition completely, but I think that the social health aspect of it is completely missed in when health, the term, is discussed, because obviously the focus is normally physical health and mental health, and the social side of it can also be really important, but it gets forgotten really easily. But to me, I think health is normally thought to be you have to be the perfect standard of a person, but I think health for each individual changes, because healthy for one individual might not fit someone else. So I think for me, it's just being able to adequately complete what you want to do in that day. That's healthy. And some days you'll strive for more, and some days you won't be able to complete that. But if you set yourself a list of goals and you're able to complete those list of goals, then that's health to me.
What sort of goals do you think about when you live to talk?
So obviously physical health could be being able to run a certain distance or something like that. And I think that's you can describe that a lot better than mental health. Mental health some days it might just look like getting up and getting out of bed. Some days it might look like being able to complete a class presentation, or it might be able to have a discussion about a topic that you don't find easy to discuss. I think that every day health could be something different to that individual. I think you can't really define it. I think it's an ever-changing concept that changes on a whim.
What do you think, Mark? In terms of like a change in concept. What do you sort of agree with that, or what do you think there?
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, as someone, I like to think that in my life I play quite a lot of sport. So, I've got my cricket, I've got my rugby, and I think there's such a difference between physical health and mental health. Like it's what I don't ever feel like both are focused on at the same time. I think obviously, you see on a rugby pitch, you see people get injured all the time. You pick them up after a game, you go and have a few beers, that's that. But also, like with physical health, that can lead into mental health quite a lot. Like if you get injured, or if you're not included in a certain team or training, whatever, it starts to sort of affect you up here. And I think that's where they intertwine massively. Yeah, I mean, I also agree with Phoebe in the sense that there is, like I said, they're not always all focused on at the same time, and I think that is in itself not very healthy. I think you've got to give every aspect of health almost like the same amount of time, otherwise one's going to slip, and that could, who knows where that can lead. Injuries, whether it's injuries or you slip in, you mindset wise, you start to feel down. But yeah, I think there's definitely sort of mood. There's never consistent focus between all the aspects of health.
So how do we think, sort of open question to anyone, how do you think we can sort of get all the aspects of health to be focused on in sort of like, we say sport, like we said, the physical and mental health, and I guess the social side of it as well, being socially healthy there. But how can we get all three aspects into one sort of area?
I think the sort of first point for me is like having a discussion. I mean, we don't do, I see at uni, it doesn't happen enough. Obviously with Movember, there's a special focus on it, but like, I think there needs to be more, like, it's one thing saying, oh, people speak up, whatever. I think there needs to be a sort of collective effort to try and put more focus onto it, because they are all linked, very heavily. There is there's aspects of all three of them that, are the same. So I think there needs to be some, a discussion had, whether it's on a sort of wider scale or in smaller groups, as to how you're going to tackle, keeping all three, all aspects almost under the same roof, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, so at my uni, I also play hockey and netball, and I feel like if we put as much time into the mental side as you do physical health, like keeping up your fitness, maintaining your like diet, maintaining your 5K pace, if we put as much time and effort into that as we do having discussions about how we're actually feeling, how we're doing outside of sport as well, maybe with the stress of the wider world as well, that would be really beneficial. And that would also subsequently improve the social aspect, because you feel like you get to know your teammates better. So that's where like the friendships and the social side come of it as well. So I think it's about trying to balance each aspect and realizing that each are as important as the other, and there is not one that you have to prioritize. It all comes in like a balance.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You kind of brought up some very specific. It's you can measure a 5K time. You can measure lots of things about physical health much more easily than you can mental health, and it's definitely something that's, if you think in healthcare, it's historically it's been very, psychiatry is its own specialty, and whereas if it worked, someone's kind of physical, what's going on, whether it's if you've got a long-term illness, we know that affects, that's a major risk factor for kind of developing depression, things like that. But because it's quite hard, it's not as tangible. It's easier to. I think it is easier just to kind of put it to one side and focus on, because everybody likes the idea of, I want to see improvement, and it's very easy to show, oh look, my 5K times got better. Oh look, my symptoms are under control. But much harder to set a kind of, what is an improvement in mental health? What is the benchmark of, good gosh, what sort of time span?
Yeah, I think so. For me, coming from a mental health background, it it's sort of my whole journey is sort of been that whole thing of about time for me and sort of giving myself time to allow myself to progress. But knowing what that progression's like is has been very different each day. I think so. What you touched on earlier, Phoebe, was sort of someone like just getting out of bed, like that was a key thing, and that was something that I really struggled with was when I tried to sort of commit suicide, I really struggled to get out of bed the next day, and I was crying, and like for me, just going and just like getting out of bed and just going for a walk, like that was my big thing, and so that tick box for me was an amazing thing. But then I think socially as well, I think this is something that I think is quite important and sort of seeing the benefit of what it had for me of diving into my community and sort of seeing that social progress of whether it's just talking to one person, whether it's going around and talking to five people, or even just giving someone a fist bump that someone I don't even know and just giving someone a compliment, like setting tasks like that. That for me showed me a lot of progression in my community and that my social strides. But I gave myself the confidence to go and go express myself. And I had a chat with Chris Townsend, who's the head of Falstead School, and he said that COVID's knocked everyone's social skills back. Like we expected it to come back and everyone to go on as normal, but everyone's taken such a step backwards that like almost schools and people need to focus a bit more on what their social skills are like now, instead of sort of what your academics are. Can you actually go and socialize, communicate with people? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter what grades we got. It matters sort of what your interactions are with people. I think that's sort of quite a good thing. So looking at the four of us, I didn't go to uni. 80's a doctor. It's Malk and Phoebe, you're at uni now. But all our interactions are through people. Like we all play sport. Mainly, well, for me, partially is for the interaction of sport and not actually for going there to go compete the whole time, but to enjoy my time on a Saturday playing cricket or playing hockey. And that's sort of been my big strides.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I sort of, going back to what you said about, COVID and it affecting everyone's social skills. Obviously, we were brought out of that very gradually, and it's sort of, you end up spending a lot of time with a very small group of people. And I think for me, that's sort of overflown massively. Like at home, I tend to spend, my time with the same group of, small group of people, and that doesn't really change. And I think, like, whereas when you're at uni, you're around loads and loads of people. Like, I've got the cricket club, I've got my rugby team as well, and I've got mates, I've made outside of that. And I think but sometimes when I'm at home, I can feel like it all gets a bit repetitive, and you sort of start to feel that, maybe, I wouldn't say it's unhealthy, but it's like, you're going through the same motions day in, day out, and it starts to wear down on you a little bit, I think. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being at home and it's great, I love being around my family, my friends, but like it can feel like you're sort of in this very small bubble, and it's quite hard to branch out of that. So I feel like, having that balance between home and uni is very healthy. And obviously, Dill and AT, you're both in your 20s. You're both, you've got lives, you've got jobs, whatever. But it's so for you, you're meeting new people every day. You're talking to various people, so it's a bit different. But I think, yeah, I'd say I'm sort of quite excited to see what like post uni life brings in terms of meeting new people, branching out, working with different people. But yeah,
I agree with that. So obviously, like you're saying, at uni you meet new people, but like everybody says that as you get older it is harder and gets increasingly harder to meet new people. I think it is so important that you do put yourself in situations where you do still meet new people as you get older. I mean, I'm only 20, I can't really talk, but like say when I leave uni, like I think there should be more emphasis on social health, because obviously we all play sport, we all know how closely everybody links physical health and mental health. But I think since COVID and since we've all had to learn the new normal, I think it shows how there should be a bigger emphasis on social and mental health. Because the amount of people that you see nowadays, like going and doing stuff by themselves, don't get me wrong, it could be great to be more comfortable in your own skin and just do stuff alone. But it all comes in balance again. And the longer you do spend by yourself, the more likely it is that your social health is going to lack, your mental health is going to lack, and then your physical health is going to subsequently lack as well. So yeah, I was just agreeing with what you were saying, Archie.
I've got an interesting story on that and sort of just interactions with people. So sometimes I get the bus into work, and I had an interaction with an old lady once, and like us having a conversation was, I think, well, for me, it was really interesting to have, but I think also for her it was even more important because seeing what she was doing, and we had a chat about like her charity work and like the art and sort of the interactions that she's having, and so like seeing almost people from an older age, and I think back to my parents that haven't been able to get out as much since COVID, but you're having these small interactions with people where nowadays, like my norm is I plug headphones in, I go on the bus, I avoid people, but I very much know that if I actually cared and if I tried more, and when I do try, it makes a massive difference to someone that's sitting next to me because someone's day could be absolutely horrible, but one conversation, one person sparks up something like excitement in their life, and he's talking about something that someone's passionate about, and all of a sudden you see a smile on their face, and they're just going with life, and they get happy again, and you can sort of see like what different sort of human interactions and the old norm actually was about. And I'm thinking about like pre-technology when you hear about stories from like my parents when they interacted. Like my mom knew my uncle before she knew my dad, which was like a weird story, but it was through like social connections that all of a sudden they knew each other. And it was about like hearing those stories. I always like wish we could go back to like pre-technology to have those interactions with people where there's a bit more emphasis on socialization than instant messaging. So I don't know what your thoughts are on sort of I think about like instant messaging, like using WhatsApp, Snapchat, like the positives of it, like we're all in communication. But for me, I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago and I spoke about my use of technology and how I actually didn't use my phone as a phone. I used it as an escape device and just passive scrolling. But now I actually use my phone. I pick up the phone and phone people, and instead of just messaging, I go and I see someone, or I'll pick up a phone and have a conversation. Don't know what your thoughts are. Are there any sort of like techniques that you've used, like open question, like to help you in social situations?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that, this has been a thing of the last few years. I tend to sort of just like, if I'm not doing anything or my focus is swaying, I'll just pick up my phone and I'll be on it for, it could be hours. Like, my friends have commented on it as well. Like, if I ever feel like I'm in like that's not necessarily an awkward spot, but like I feel like I'm not engaged in the conversation or whatever, I'll just literally pick up my phone and I'll be, whether it might be pointless or not, might not be, I might be messaging people, but it's definitely been commented on. I mean, I use the term, like people sometimes say it's a bit like antisocial, but I feel like it's almost like a way for me, like you said, to sort of like get out of a situation. Like just you pick up a phone and then you're like if you're at like a nightclub or obviously at uni with sport we're out all the time. If you're in a nightclub and you feel like suddenly like it's not like the environment isn't for you, like you might just go on your phone and message someone else and like you start talking to your mates and then leave. Like it's almost like a, for me, like I can always pick up a phone and like exit the situation that I'm in. Yeah, I think that's sort of how I mean, I don't use it enough to, I mean, obviously I have all these WhatsApp groups and whatever, and, Snapchat groups, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm talking to people all the time, but I do find myself sometimes using it a bit pointlessly, to sort of just move on to the next situation almost.
Well, if you notice that if you there's a group sitting around the table, as soon as one person gets the phone out, then within a few minutes, suddenly everybody is all heads down, phones out. But I think it's quite an interesting, a point about that. It's easy to use a phone to kind of avoid, always avoid an uncomfortable, it's avoiding silence and and it's perhaps we've all lost the ability just to sit in silence, and you don't always need to be coming up with something interesting to say or say anything at all, but that's that kind of social, just being in a group and just kind of being comfortable enough to sit and be happy in in silence. And
Yeah, I agree. I think that we use our phones an awful lot, but for the wrong thing. Like I'm the exact same. If I'm in an awkward situation, my phone's whipped out in an instant. Like it's just a little escape. If I don't like where I am, you get the phone out, you start texting someone. Next thing you go, oh, look, blah blah told me I've got to leave. I think that comes back to what we were saying earlier about how we seem to be not necessarily lacking, but slacking in social skills and interactions. Because I'm the same. When I get on the bus, my headphones are in, my head's down on my phone. I don't look up at anybody else. But the one time, let's say my phone's dead or something, and I interact with somebody on the bus, that could make their day. Because we're so used to just picking up the phone and going on the phone, we don't even consider talking to people around us. I think it's just. But the thing with me, I've made a conscious effort to try and stop using my phone as much. But I don't necessarily do it in a positive way. I look for other ways to distract myself, say watch the TV instead of going on my phone, instead of not going on my phone and going out and get fresh air, which is also, I think, the difference, because we all know we shouldn't be using our phones very much, and we all know that it can be detrimental if we continuously do it, but we haven't really got anything else to implement. So we always end up coming back to our phones as like a escape or like just a reliance, I think.
You always think like our phones are sort of becoming like an addiction to us, and I think particularly like our generation now and the younger kids, like seeing it in schools, like how reliant people are on the technology now, and so seeing what impacts that has had on a lot of physical health in children. Seeing like kids can barely run 300 meters before they are huffing and puffing, and sort of seeing how scary that is. And so yeah, what are our thoughts on, is it an addiction, or are we just sort of are we lacking what our parents had in a way, or do we sort of not know what our parents actually had to do in order to socialize?
I think it's like we're being like fed this stuff. Obviously, we've got a role to play in it ourselves, but we live in this technical generation where everything is done online. You got all your lectures are recorded or whatever. You've got emails, text, so it's almost like your everyday life depends on you having a phone. Whereas obviously you talk about like what our parents were like when they were younger. I think that is relevant, but it's also like times have changed. It's this technology is a massive part of our lives. Like we can't, for us to just like get rid of it. Like no one's going to just become like a hermit and ditch all their technology. If you want to progress in life, you've got to have the ability to communicate, obviously in person, but the majority of that happens over a phone call, over a text. So I think that whilst we may be on our phones way too much, I think that it's because it comes as a result of us needing to be on them for a lot of stuff anyway. So it's very hard to just say, oh, I'm going to stop using my phone all the time. Like, I've got all these messages on my phone about like, committee stuff within the cricket club and, stuff about home. So it's quite hard, if I don't respond to some of these messages, people are like, oh, why are you not responding? Blah, blah, blah. I feel like you've got sort of a duty to, if someone's trying to make an effort with you, you've got to make an effort back. So I think it's all linked. Like I said, we do spend a lot of time on our phones, but a lot of it is because we're already on them. So it's, whilst I do pick it up randomly, sometimes I might be like, just finished texting someone, so I'll be like, oh, right, I'll go on Instagram, or I'll go on TikTok or whatever. So yeah.
So you said there that, is if you're not on, so there'll be a committee thing comes through and you're not on your phone, people say, what are you doing? What's the thing they're asking you to do? Something that needs to be done then? Or is,
I feel like it's like a mix of both. Like sometimes I might be like, if I haven't done something, for example, and it's like a gentle reminder, like you need to post this, you need to do that, blah, blah, blah. So like, I think you do make a good point. Like sometimes it's not like, I don't need to do it there and then, but I pick up anyway and I read it, so it's like, oh, I might as well have a look at what's been said. Like, and then you're like, oh, I'm on my phone. Might as well do something else on my phone.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like um if you're asked to do something there and then, normally it doesn't need doing there and then, but we're almost held to a standard where, because we're all glued to our phones and we're literally going to pick it up and read it instantly, there's like a preconceived standard that you will just do it there and then, and then if you don't, that's when the problems like incur, and people start to question what you're doing instead, when sometimes you just don't want to do it there and then because you don't really want to pick up your phone. But because we're so addicted to them and we're constantly on them, that's when you're held to a certain standard of doing it there and then. But I also think that I think we all know that being on our phones all the time is detrimental, but there is no like plan in place of how to like lessen how much we're on it, because like Archie was saying, our whole lives are currently on our phones. Like if you miss it, say if I miss a lecture at uni, it doesn't matter because it's recorded. And I think that's a really bad mindset to get into. And like I said, I think we all know we shouldn't be on our phones as much, but we don't necessarily know how to stop because our whole lives are on our phones.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Like where does the line lie for us in terms of use of our phones and our use of technology? And is it because of technology that we are almost becoming lazier physically, which is then leading to more exposure to like the mental health aspects? Or are we just looking at social media to get away from interactions with people? Are we using that as sort of almost how I used to say it? Well, someone said to me, I did like a social media cleansing where the messages that were coming through my social media, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever that was, it was really negative messaging, and that was exposing me to such bad thoughts about mental health, and that knocked me back a few months. But then having to change that, like using that in a positive way of trying to get positive messages reinforced to myself every night when I was dealing with mental health and I couldn't tell anything positive to myself. Like using technology then was quite different, and sort of looking for more positive aspects and sort of more inspirational quotes, inspirational videos, people that I found interesting. So I think of the likes of the basketball world, like the Kobe Bryants and sort of Michael Jordans, and sort of hearing things about their lives and having access to like their thoughts and speeches, like that was very beneficial. But then I think it comes to like sort of that self-discipline of where we're drawing the line as individuals to our use of technology.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you need to change your social media presence to something more positive, which that's what people find challenging. So I did a bit of a social media cleanse in summer and came out of it and just completely changed my outlook on what I like wanted my phone to be used for. So came out and set my home screen to positive quotes or things like that. But I think it's really bad that it takes to get to something so triggering to have to go through a social media cleanse. I think that it shouldn't be all or nothing to be able to stay in good mental health. It should be like just little things. It shouldn't have to be this really big thing you have to go through to then be able to have social media and positive mental health intertwined, if that makes sense. Because it takes people getting to the breaking point to then be able to reel them back in, which it shouldn't do. And that's where it starts to be really detrimental to mental health and then physical health and also social health.
Massively. I think that's sort of where, like with Mark, you said earlier that us having conversations and using this as a standpoint and us doing this like we're doing now and sharing what our stories and experiences are and about like social media cleansing. Like Phoebe and I, we've used it in a similar way, but also very different ways. That we both got to the brink of something, but we threw ourselves back. But us going around and talking about things is such an important and key factor. And so I think for me, that's sort of where Movember is starting to lie now. For me, it's not what the past was of when my dad is like, oh, he's got a mustache. Why has he got it? Oh, it's prostate cancer. It's now a more global scale and sort of a more like diverse topic. So if I had to say what Movember means to each of you, what would you say to that?
I mean, well, from my point of view, I feel like it's like obviously mental health like recently has become, is coming to focus a lot more, but it's a dedicated time in which, we need to put, aside all this like, oh, people need to speak up. Like I think people use it as a time, not necessarily those affected badly by mental health, but to make a more concerted effort to address these issues. And, I think, being part of two Movember teams here at uni, I think there's a massive focus on like being together, like togetherness. So, it's like throughout the year, obviously people, they do all their different things, but during November, it's like we're all committed to the same cause. We all want to look after everyone else. We're doing all this fundraising, growing all these moustaches. It's like it massively comes into focus, and I think it's great because a lot of the time people don't like to speak up, and there's a sort of constant banging of all right, I'm one message away and one phone call away, and I think people tend to use it a lot more than they do throughout the rest of the year. I think it, for me as well, like running, doing all this running, it's given me like a purpose for the month. It's made me feel a lot better, seeing other people do this as well, getting behind your friends doing their various challenges, growing their moustaches, seeing each other a lot more, having all these like workshops to do with mental health. I think Movember acts as sort of like a microscope, if you must. So like it puts a massive focus on this issue that's always there, but it's a dedicated period of time to something that is so important that should be so important to everyone. Yeah.
So you're sort of hoping that Movember is acting now as a catalyst for sort of like in lots of uni, and it's always like it's a constant reminder every year, but also now with your group, it's acting as sort of what I said, like the catalyst to push everyone forward.
Big time, yeah, massively. I think that a lot of people have, undertaken new things for Movember, and I've spoken to some of my friends who are doing all this running as well, and they're like, right, I'm going to continue doing this running because it makes me feel a lot better about myself. If you get up and go for a run in the morning, you feel much better throughout the day, and even if that's only a tiny bit better, it is, it's an improvement. So I think that more chat. We've already got a workshop booked for December as a club. I think to focus on mental health, and that's like you said, that is Movember acting as a catalyst. It's we've got things coming up. We're building on the progress that's being made during the month.
It sounds a lot. I think this is probably when you say this kind of idea of sort of collective action. It almost gives a reason for a group of people to do something. Then by setting a challenge, by kind of pushing yourself a little bit, that perhaps that sound like it create a chance to kind of bond as a group. So I think that's kind of, I've definitely, as Movember's views have grown, that's something I've kind of picked up more and more of these kind of fundraising challenges, rather than just the tashes, which I think is, always going to be particularly strong in sports, sports teams and kind of university spaces. I think I kind of wonder, so because we're all kind of very similar background. I think in a lot of ways university is a little bit of its own kind of environment, and my question is, what do you think Movember is doing for those people who aren't part of sports teams? Do you think we're having this? Do you think it's having the the scope to get and reach out and involve these people who might not necessarily have the same access to kind of sporting groups or university space that we might do?
No, I mean,
yeah,
I think
my
yeah, you should be Karen there.
I was just saying that was my question as well, because obviously you see what it's like at uni, but that's because you're in a group and it acts as a catalyst, but that's because you've forms group prior to Movember? Like, what's it like in a wider environment or in the wider world? How, I think I was going to take the controversial view of how, don't get me wrong, Movember is incredible and all that, but how much does it impact people in a wider setting that's, say, not uni? Because I've only like realized, it might be a naive standpoint, but I've only realized how big a thing it is since going to uni. So I think my question was just like, how big is it, and how is it managing to impact the wider world, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think that, obviously, I've got friends who have, left uni. Obviously, we've got AT, Dill, we got, Cal as well. They all do it. Everyone's doing Movember. And I think when you raise this money, you see these people donating to your Movember, fundraising page, whatever, you understand like how much it does mean to other people. You see all these people growing moustaches outside of a sort of, education environment. And you understand that, all these people, it is one big cause. Like you said, it is, whether it's, I know I'm part of, a team that's doing it, but I feel like everyone is doing it, is obviously working towards the same thing. They all understand just how important it is. And when you see all these, thousands and thousands of people growing these moustaches, raising all this money, running all those kilometers, doing all these silly challenges, it does add like a massive, like wider sense of unity. I see myself and I see, AT and Dale have got some pretty good tashes at the moment. Cal's obviously got a bit of a belter going on. It sort of adds a sense of joy for me as well. And I know with other people it does, seeing everyone united, take, this 1 month where all these guys growing these moustaches to raise awareness for, men's health, mental health. It certainly makes me happier in a wider sense, motivates me sort of more.
So I'm just on the I'm currently on the Movember website, and we've got last year £16.4 million raised in November 2022. Like the kind of like some of the sort of the variety of projects that are getting funding through it is certainly pretty. I think that's certainly one of the things that, as a healthcare system in this the country, is this feeling there's not enough money, but it's kind of people's efforts is as you said kind of, it's not just you're quite right. It's maybe being a bit fickle when I was kind of pick on November being a university thing, because obviously it's something that people continue doing after they leave. Over the last 20 years, 873 million. So yeah, so I don't think there's there's lots. It sounds like there certainly there's lots that is being done through it.
Yeah, I think sort of in a like an outside uni scope in work. As soon as I rocked up with the mustache at school, it was the first thing anyone asked me. Oh, is your mustache for Movember? Like, what's Movember? Like, what are you doing for Movember? It's a symbol now for everyone to sort of ignite the conversation, because you've heard of Movember before, but now seeing someone in your school, in your work environment, seeing a friend do it, like all of a sudden they've got facial hair like, on the top of their lip. They're also going, okay, like, why do you have a mustache? Like I had people ask me, like, what have you done to your face? Like, why do you have a mustache on? It's like, well, it's Movember. Like, there's a story behind it. Or I think it's giving that open communication to people, like, whether they're a 4-year-old that I'm interacting with, or one of the head teachers sort of going, oh, are you doing Movember? It's like, yes, I am. Like, this is what I'm doing it for. Like, instead of giving these reasons behind it, it's giving that broader scope as well. And so it's very symbolic of something.
Yeah, I feel like from what I've seen and from my point of view is, I feel like I don't want to. It's like men feel more comfortable talking about serious topics during November, because they have something like they could bring up Movember and then that leads on to other things. Because obviously there's a big stigma around men don't talk and all that. So I feel like with all Movember, come back to social media, there is a big push for it in November, and I think it does really help with men and say boys like feeling more comfortable talking about it, because it's so talked about, especially in November, because everybody's growing moustaches. So I think that's also a really good thing that can then be implemented into the rest of the months of the year. So yeah,
it's quite interesting. So having dived into mental health, that May is the Mental Health Awareness Month, and November is just general men's health, and so there's now become, with mental health becoming more popular, and sort of people being able to speak about it a little more freely and raising the topic in November, and sort of it's given a symbol to it, and sort of shifting away from what I understood as Movember, like I said earlier, was prostate cancer when I grew up in South Africa. Like that's why it was done. But now it's changed to more of a global sense of, can we talk about more topics? And with mental health being as prominent as it is now, and people trying to make a difference in it, it's been really beneficial. But it's sort of how do we operate outside of Movember as men or as humans as well? That's really going to kick us on forward. And I was interested to find out from your perspective, Phoebe, that during the month of November, is there any difference amongst women when they speak a bit more to?
Yes, there is, but I don't think there is as much as there should be, because it's a month we all know as men grow their moustaches, for all that, and yeah, we do equally try, and we do say we do the running and we do that, but I think there's more of a spotlight on the men's mental health aspect, which is not necessarily a bad thing at all, because it's obviously there's a massive stigma around, women can deal with it better and all that. But I feel like there could be more done to get women more involved, and like say the women talking to the men, not just the men all coming together as a collective. Because I'm talking quite candid and quite generally here, but it is all about, say in sports teams, it's all about the sports teams coming together, which is normally based on your gender, and not say people talking to people. So say, I know obviously not cricket, know it quite well, it's all about your teams, and it's all about talking to each other in the club. It's not necessarily like, I don't know, not cricket talking to the girls' tennis. It's about just looking after your mates, and I think it's a lot easier for men to turn to men during November than men to turn to anybody, if that makes sense. So I feel like there should be more done to create it into something wider and get women more involved, and not just put this notion on it should stick to men helping out men, if that makes sense.
What do you think that could be done? Obviously, you mentioned sort of different sports codes and speaking to each other. But what else could be done? What sort of something that you'd like to see happen?
I feel like I would like to see, say, the challenges that get involved in. I feel like I would like to see them done together, and them being like I don't know the word, them being attempted together, and it just be more of a collective thing than you turning to your mates. I don't know exactly what should be done, but I just know that I feel like there is a gap and something needs to be done to fulfill it. I'm not saying Movember is obviously incredible and has fully changed the outlook on mental health. I just feel like there's always steps that could be done to make it a more universal thing, not just the focus on men's mental health and men talking to men.
So I was going to ask, is there an equivalent to sort of like a Movember for women?
See, I was thinking about this earlier, and I personally would say no. I feel like other people would disagree with me, but obviously we have the breast cancer awareness, and that's mostly our month and our week. But I wouldn't say there is a bigger thing as Movember. That might be because there is more stigma around men don't talk, and men need a little bit of an extra push, maybe, to breach these difficult topics than women might do. So that might be why, but I would say there isn't an equivalent. Maybe we don't need one, but that's again quite candid and quite controversial. But I think it is just because Ben needed that little extra push to go to talk about it all.
And so men sort of hunt in tribes, really, don't we? We sort of hunt with one another. We go together with one another, and sort of I think from my side, going in and in a way like letting a woman into my safe space has been one of my greatest challenges. But also, like for me, it was fairly easy. Like growing up as an only child, I was really close to my mom, and all the psychologists I went to were all female as well. So I was very lucky in that sense that I got to interact with females and sort of like their understanding of like how like a male brain works and sort of like their speciality in looking at it that way. But like as like men, I know I always feel a little more comfortable like chatting to sort of like Alex or Archie than would speaking to any other female, but that has changed over my time. And sort of I think it's sort of someone just has to take the brave step. If someone can just be brave enough to go, let's all chat about it. Let's get in a circle. Let's get all the sports codes together, whether we male, female, anyone could just come along and let's just have a chat. Let's see what we can do. And I think sort of it's just looking for that. I think we're just looking for that one person that's just going to go like I'll take the lead here and let's just come join in and let's see what happens. So maybe that's an answer for going forward. I don't know what Malk, AT, what are your thoughts maybe? We've stunned them.
Okay. I mean, I, in terms of the inclusivity of it, I massively agree that there isn't enough of it. We look at, we get sent these like leaderboards, right? So in terms of which club at the uni and which uni is doing best or whatever, and there's always so much emphasis on that and not enough on like the individual. And obviously we have all these like within, being like again being part of a sports club, you have all these like people messaging saying like, right, we're gonna have a chat at this time. Anytime you need me, give me a phone call. And the uni does like the uni of the Nottingham uni, like Movember thing, they do put on like workshops and chats and whatever, but there isn't like they don't really drum it in much at all, if anything. Like at the start of the month they go like, right, if you need to chat to anyone, then chat to someone, like we're always here, blah blah blah. But there's not, I get a lot of emails from the university and I don't look at every single one of them, but what I have noticed is there's not a lot of like there's not enough focus on that. Like there's not a consistent reminder that option is there, to go and talk to, whether it's someone or multiple people. And it tends to take like a big event to happen for the uni to get involved and be like, right, okay, if you need to talk to someone, then, there are these hours, X, Y, Z, whatever. And I think sort of outside of Movember, specifically, I think we had a chat the other day and we sort of, like you said, we do sort of men tend to stick together. There's not enough conversations had between all the girls and the girls sports. Like it's, and that's something that needs to change almost, because like we went to the pub the other night with the ladies cricket. We got along really well. Then we had like really nice conversations. And, we're like, why don't we do that enough? Like, why don't we sort of try and bridge that gap more? Because I feel like if we did, then we get so much more perspective. We'd understand how they deal with things, they cope with mental health, and the fact that we don't is like it's sort of letting ourselves down, because it becomes very one-dimensional if you don't. You only get half the story, and I think getting that bigger picture is so important. Especially between male and female.
We won race after all, aren't we? We're the human race, so we after one another, don't we? So, AT, sort of, and from a medical standpoint, is there any sort of difference in what you've experienced, also read between men and women, what their health is like mental health, physical health. Is there any sort of anything from that side from you?
Yeah, I mean, so there's huge amounts of of data around kind of different that there are, different health outcomes between men and women. There's completely different kind of disease kind of prevalences between the two, and I think the one thing I think I've just wanted to kind of pick up as we've all been kind of saying, oh, we need to, it's like broadening. I think the data, for what is protective of someone's risk of committing suicide, so that, so if I was seeing someone who said I'm having suicidal thoughts, the things that would make me, the protective factors that would make me think this person is low risk are do they have, what are their close relationships like? And I think it's all very well and good saying that, we should all, we need to be open and all talk with each other about it. But I'm sure we know stories of lots of people who know lots of people, talk with lots of people, but don't actually have any close protective relationships. And I think that's probably, I think a lot of what, I do think, a lot of what Movember, I guess initially kind of was trying to kind of encourage this idea of broaching these topics and helping to get kind of these kind of deeper relationships. And I think that's because we mentioned kind of things like loneliness and how kind of because it's something that we know is actively is bad but loneliness is bad for people. And I just I think one strong relationship is far more protect will have a far better impact of reducing rates of suicides across everybody. And I think that's that would be the thing that I think is that's my takeaway, is that it's about forming these deep protective relationships, and that's what will have the biggest impact in reducing suicide risk. Yeah, so that was just kind of my thoughts on what we kind of just brought up. I'll leave that hanging.
Cliffhanger, as always, AT. I think you're right then. That one personal connection that for me is massive, and thinking about sort of people that I can personally connect with. I'm thankful that it has come through sport a lot of the time, but when I think away from sport now, I've now experienced what it's like to have friends outside of sport, which has been really interesting, and seeing their perspective and chatting to them about just life in general and having that emotional connection, that deeper connection with them has been more rewarding than I thought it would be. And it's led to sort of like great things coming from it. And I'm very fortunate to have had that. And like I said, the big takeaway is just finding that one connection. And Phoebe, again, I keep coming back to you sort of from a woman's perspective, because obviously the three of us don't have a clue from that side. Is sort of health spoken about more from a woman's perspective, like not necessarily men's health, but just health in general? Is it more of an open discussion?
I think so. I think that we don't necessarily ask each other if we're okay. I know that men do that as well, like all the time. I feel like we just give more open answers. So I think it's not necessarily discussed. I think it's discussed the same amount, but we give more back into it. So say if somebody asks us, we won't just go, I'm okay. If you are necessarily like having a bad day, you will go into detail about it, and I feel like you'll feel more comfortable going into detail about it than males might do. Because I know that especially during Movember, obviously there's a lot of emphasis put on men asking each other if they're okay. But I think my question would be, is there as much emphasis on making sure the answer is the truth? Which I think is what females are a lot better at doing. So say like, if somebody says, I'm okay, and you can clearly tell they're not, we'll keep pushing and we'll be like, are you sure? Whereas, again, quite candid, I'm not a male, I don't know. I feel like you'll just stop at the I'm okay and won't want to breach the sometimes tricky discussion that's to follow. So I think that we don't necessarily ask more, but we give more back into the response, and making sure that it is the truth we're getting, than males necessarily do.
Malky, do you sort of agree with that in terms of, like, I personally think we do, as men, we sort of just take things as face value. We don't really dive into each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, massively. I mean, I think the questions are so much. If someone like, for example, like, I take home and at uni. Like, if I'm at uni, if I'm at a social, and if I'm feeling down or if someone else is feeling down, like, someone will definitely ask, like, are you all right? Like, how's your day been? And they can brush it off by going, oh, I'm absolutely fine, mate. I'm just a bit a bit tired, which tends to be one of the big responses at university. Oh, I'm just tired. And like Phoebe said, that's not chased up at all. Like, until someone becomes very, absent, if they tend to not show up to stuff, that's when the following up comes much later down the line. And at home, I think, obviously at home you tend to have the mates that you've known for years and years and years, and you talk to them all the time, and like, you almost sometimes, or from my point of view, sometimes you feel like you almost don't want to be seen as like down in front of them. Like, you want to try and present like outwardly the best version of yourself, and like try make sure that they think you're all right. I'll go back to the point that, like, the question is asked a lot. Like, I get asked a lot if I'm all right. I'll ask my mates about if they're all right. And sometimes you do get a response that's like, no, I'm not great. I've not been feeling great for this sort of this amount of time. But it takes a lot of work. Like, it really does, and it often takes more than one person to get involved. Because one person asking if you're all right is great, but if you've got multiple people who are sort of checking up on you and asking the question, then you feel happier to tell them how you're actually feeling. Be honest with them. I think I think obviously we all have all our friends outside. In whatever environment it is, and I just feel like every it's all good, all well and good, someone asking the question, but everyone has got to be alert. If someone is, if you ask someone how they are and you can tell they're not great, then you need to sort of, give other people a gentle nudge and be like, maybe you should ask as well, because if there's multiple different people, multiple different angles coming at it, then you sort of understand that people do care, and that they really do want your honest response.
Yeah, I think another thing is that females, when they're asking, are more conscious of what setting they're asking in. And say, like, we ask at training, and you're not necessarily going to get an honest answer at training. We're more conscious of asking again later on. Whereas I think males just they ask, staying wrong, they ask all the time, but maybe they don't ask necessarily in the right setting. Like you said, you brought up asking at socials, which is obviously a time for socializing, drinking normally. You're probably not likely to get an honest answer. And I think what females do well is they then ask later on, say when we're just like sat around, I don't know, having food instead, or we'll message a follow-up question just to make sure. Whereas, like you said, I feel like males take it at face value more, and if you ask in the wrong setting, you're less likely to get an honest answer.
I don't know if anyone saw that Norwich mental health video that was put out, and I think that epitomizes exactly what you just said there, Phoebe. That whole video of the gender we all thought that was down actually wasn't down as the other man. But nothing was asked in that supportive setting, and that follow up. There's no follow up from it, and that's the key, I think. Because I don't know what you think, AT, is sort of that second checkup. That the first one's great, but can you go again when everything's not as jovial? Can you go ask in a one situation, like you say, over lunch, in a more so environment where people could probably feel a little bit more okay to share?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's getting a holistic picture, and I think your eyes, I think, is one, as Malky said, is one person is just getting a snapshot. But I think if you as you kind of build up a few different viewpoints and can get more of a sense of a sense of what's going on, I think that's certainly really, really valuable and helpful thing. I mean, again, it kind of comes a little bit down to what I kind of said about before, about kind of like having these important connections and having these relationships where you're able to kind of observe what's going on, have a willingness to get involved. I think, I think it's, again, there's a lot, kind of, I think it is always kind of like, the hard thing is like, the hardest first step to do is first to actually, physically ask for help. And that comes, to whether that's, to a friend, whether it's to university counselling, whether to your GP, or it is a very difficult thing to do. And the more support you have to kind of help make that push and that step is all the better.
Amazing. And I think we sort of go into a bit of a closing here. If there's one point that, and all three of you can sort of just give, like, what with health in general, whether that's mental health, whether that's physical health, what's your key message that you would like to give to someone if you had to meet someone face to face for the first time? What's a key message about health?
I think mine is that it's all comes in a balance, and every day is going to be different. So don't judge yourself based on a bad day. So you might be in good health, you just might have a down day. That doesn't mean you're in bad health. It just means you're having a down day. Take them all with a pinch of salt. And I think my key message is, if you are having a bad day, let yourself have a bad day. Don't try and push yourself to do things you're not going to be able to do. And be patient with yourself as well, because it all comes with time. And taking the time to get yourself in a better place is better than pushing yourself on those bad days, I think.
Awesome. Thank you. And I fully agree with you there. Coming from my background as Archie and AT will know that time is valuable to all of us. How important that aspect of time is, and more so, someone said to me, sort of, you'll never know the value of time until time has taken place. So whether you can evaluate in 3 years' time, that's when you only realize, 3 years later, in that certain moment where you felt really down, how important that was, and how important it was to give yourself that space and time to actually do what you needed to do to get you to a better day.
Exactly.
Archie?
I think it's almost a question, but you've got to ask yourself why. I think it's more on the balance side of things. So if you decide suddenly you're gonna go on a major fitness, change regime, whatever, ask yourself why you're doing that. Like, is it because you want to do that? You just just out of the blue, suddenly I want to get really fit, or is that because like, you feel that like, your appearance isn't what you want it to be? I think that balance. I think yes, it's sort of very linked to Phoebe's point. And that balance is so key. There's a reason why you do everything, and whether it's because you want to do something or someone else wants you to do something, like especially when it's personal, it's like on the mental side of things as well. So I mean, are you making a conscious decision because of something that's affected you physically, or I think it's also you've got to give equal time to all of it. Basically, I think you've got to continuously ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, and if you think that it's for your betterment, then that's great. But also, it's sort of hard to put into words. I mean, yeah, it's just on that balance. It's just making sure that you're consciously aware, that all three, well, sort of, physically, mentally, and socially, all these forms of health are as important as each other. Not one shouldn't be, talked about more often than the other. I mean, obviously mental health is massive, but I think, being physically healthier is going to make you, fairly often going to make you mentally healthier, which is going to, make you socially healthier. It's a sort of chain reaction, if you like. So I think my key point is maintaining a balance. I don't want to say healthy balance, because that's sort of it's the wrong way to say it, but yeah, a balance, and checking up on yourself in more ways than one, and checking up on other people in more ways than one.
Mark, if I had to say to you, if you could give me an example, or give us an example of something, what's your why for something? Why have you taken on Movember? Like, why have you decided to take on the physical challenge of running 120 Ks in a month?
Because first of all, I thought it'd be a good way to raise money and raise awareness. If people are seeing that I don't, obviously I used to run quite a bit, but then I stopped. A lot of my close mates and my family know that I don't run a lot. So the fact that I'm doing it shows almost how much, the cause of Movember means to me. Also, there was a physical aspect of it as well. I thought it could work hand in hand. Like, I could raise awareness while also making myself, physically healthier. Which in turn, I think running, loads of people say this to me as well, like running massively improves, more often than not improves your mental health. Like, if I go for a run at the start of the day, that puts me in a better mood for the rest of the day. Or if I've had a bad day and I go for a run in the evening, it makes my head so much clearer. For that evening, I can get work done, I can be productive, I can talk to people, I can socialize. So I think, because I haven't really put, given enough attention to Movember in the past. And I think this year it's sort of, what's happened over the last, few months with mates and family. I think it's given me a bit of a purpose, I think, and a chance to really focus on, on my, on mental health and mental health, which I haven't really done enough in the past.
Look, it's fine. I'll do some editing magic, but just say, Malcolm, thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's a highly important notice of sort of finding your purpose to do things. So that's very, very good. And actually, thank you for doing that for us. And AT, so your takeaway?
So define what's important to you and what you want to be able to do, and that is going to change with time. As health is going to change with time as you age. Understand your motivations for kind of why you want to achieve good health, and that'll give you more resilience and ability to achieve those goals. Make your targets small and achievable, and it's natural at times we can all feel overwhelmed, but there is help and support out there. Go seek it.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. This has really been fun. And hopefully this sort of give people the chance to also go have conversations, and whether that just be well, in a friend setting, but hopefully also as we sort of had now, an interaction where it's more than just one person, and more than one person from a different background, and that we are doing this as sort of one race, and as the human race here, that we're all vulnerable. We all have our times, and finding out why, doing it in a balanced way, and sort of going to seek help where we can has been fantastic to hear. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Still. Cheers. Been
Thank
awesome.
you.
Cheers, mate.